Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to begin Maseches Demai with you. There's many discussions that we can have before we start. I just want to share a couple of very, very quick ha'aros, and then we will start Daf Aleph and Aleph, like we mentioned many times. The Yerushalmi starts like that, and we're going with the Ozohader print as we've been doing until now. Okay, so what does the word Demai mean? Ki yadua Demai. What is this? However, there are other mafarshim that say other pshatim. One pshat is very famous that the word Demai comes from the word Dama, which, like we just mentioned, the Gra brings us down, and Tosas Yantiv, etc. The other one is from the word Dema, which means mixed up. Now, there's the word Dima is tear. It's a different word, but it is similar because some people say that when tears come, it's a representation of a certain mix-up that's going on, a inner turmoil that's going on. And other people say that it is the Rosh really says it comes from the word dimion, which is really, really fascinating, which is that this crop looks like it might have been tithed properly, but really it's not. And there's a famous Aruch that has a different shot also in the Erech Daled Daled, Ayin Sham, not for now. Okay, so Ki Yadua, the Gemara tells us that it's a very famous Gemara in Sota, right at the end, that says that Yochanan Kohen Gadol sent his emissaries throughout Eretz Yisrael to observe the process, and he recognized that there were a lot of Amaratzim there, and even though one thing they knew for sure was they had to do Truma, because that was Doraisa, and there was lots of punishments involved with that, so therefore they were very, very still mocked on that, but Rove of them, Amaratzim, did not take off the proper other tithes properly. Now, as we go through the Masechta, we'll try to define two things. First of all, that there is Misa, that is, there are the other tithes that are not taken off also have other penalties. So the Amaratzim were careful to take off Truma because it was very, very strict, because they know that there's Misa B'nei Shemayim there. The Rosh on this Masechta, and Chala talks about this as well. But basically, the question is, well, what about Trumas Meiser, which is also has the exact same chumrah? So that they were just ignorant, they didn't know, and there is such a concept that people are just ignorant. But also other mafarshim like the Rush in Parak Daled Mishnah Aleph, where a lot of this is discussed. So he says the pshat is because it's so cheap to take off Truma Doraisa, because there's no shear to it, midoraisa, so therefore they're not choshed on it. Now, we'll get to the first mission in a minute, which is a very funny way to start the Masechta. It doesn't talk about the obligation, it talks about the exemptions, and we'll talk about that, a lot to share about that. So anyway, Yochanan Kohen Gadol made this gezerah, and that's what happened. So there's a very, very famous question, which is, who is this Yochanan Kohen Gadol? So the Sefer Yuchsim says that he was a father of Matisyahu Kohen Gadol, the Rel Chashmonai one, that is very famous in the Al Nisim prayer, B'yim Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol, that's who it was. And the Derech Hamunah of Chaim Kanievsky seems to say that the Rambam agrees with this as well. However, other people say that this is the famous Rav Yochanan Kohen Gadol who actually went off the derech, and who became a tzduki at the end of his life. And Doros Rishonim says this, and many other Mefarshim say this. Rosh Sirulia says this as well. So if that's the case, it's very funny, because here you have this guy, Chas Shalom, I shouldn't say the word, because when you have this great man who was a leader who made a gezerah in order to protect people, but you see that it didn't matter. It didn't even protect himself, because he himself went off. And we see two things. So either we see that, like the Gemara says, Al Tam V'atzcha Yom Moscha, that a person has to always be questioning himself, make sure he's doing the right thing and keeping himself in check, or you see what we call in psychology, that a person could be on the outside, someone very frum, but on the inside, really, they're not. Now, Chazal don't seem to criticize him and say that he wasn't sincere. But what I want to say is something very interesting, which is that the question is there something wrong with this gezerah of Demai? So we'll see exactly how it works, that it doesn't apply to Hefker and other products that don't necessarily need the Trumas monsters taken off of. But perhaps as we learn the Masechta, we'll come up with some ideas to recognize why this maybe wasn't the best solution in the world, and maybe there is some criticism, although I've never seen that voiced by anybody, but there is something very odd about Rav Yochanan Kohen Gadol, according to those shitas, which are many people that say that he's the one that went off the derech, about how we can relate to this idea. Now, the whole idea of Demai is actually Demai. It actually represents the confusion between people that are not following the halacha and a dispensation for them. And so it could be that it represents the inner turmoil that was going on inside Yochanan Kohen Gadol's own mind and inside his own life. But anyway, there's what to say about that. And of course, we have to be careful when we talk about such things. So the question is, the first Mishnah starts off Hakalin Sheba Demai, which is basically the lenient species with regard to Demai, which basically the Gemara says what that means is that it's actually Machlokes in the Gemara, as we'll see. According to one opinion in the Gemara says, why is it Makel here? And that is because Here it is. Rav Yochanan says, "Lefisha rov haminim halalu ein ba an element hefker." Most of the species listed come from hefker. Therefore, manu osam chachamim. Chachamim call them. Were very lenient there. Okay, that's one opinion, and the other opinion is Reish Lakish, the famous opponent of in halacha in Torah of Rav Yochanan, and he says lo shanu ela demai. The chachamim in the Mishnah only said fruits that are exempt from tithing only when they are demai. But if you're vadai about them, that if they're definitively tevel, then they're subject to tithing. Now, according to seemingly the simple reading is, according to Rav Yochanan, these things are hefker, so therefore, even if you know for sure nothing was taken off, they're still not a problem, and you're allowed to eat them without doing anything. But according to Reish Lakish, it's only because there's a suffix here. But if you know for sure, then they would still be chayim, and we're gonna have to define what that means. So I wanted to say like this: why do we start off with a kula? We start off with a kula because whenever we make a gezerah, we have to recognize that gezeros aren't meant to limit us and to make our life filled with more yisurim. They're meant to bring us closer to Hashem. The word mitzvah, kiyadua, is salvta, which means company. A mitzvah brings us company to Hashem. And kiyadua, like the Marshal brings down, mitzvah is shem havaya. Mem tzadi, vav hey. The vav hey is the yud k vav k is the last two, and the mem tzadi is with a atbash gardak system would be yud k. What does that mean? That means that a mitzvah has something to uncover, and when we uncover that brings us netzalta. It brings us to a closeness to Hashem. In fact, Chazal say schar mitzvah, which, what does that mean? The schar of a mitzvah is one, but one shot is that it's mitzvah glorious mitzvah. When you do one mitzvah, you'll be able to get another mitzvah. But another one, which the Bali Machshava say, is schar mitzvah. The reward that you get for doing a mitzvah is mitzvah. You get tzavta, you get a closeness to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And so, therefore, by starting off with a Kalin Shem Demai, we're showing that this gezerah was not meant to inconvenience people. There are plenty of places where it doesn't apply, and that's an important distinction to make. That in all mitzvahs are not. So he's not trying to punish us or hurt us. He's just trying to give us opportunities to be close to Hashem. That's why Ratza Kodesh Baruch Hu Zakis Shol Herbalam Torah Mitzvos, like the Rambam writes Kiyadua, and when he explains that mission at the end of Makos, that all the mitzvahs are there so we could do one with our full heart and get close to Hashem. We should be zocha as we learn through the Demai to understand the Divrei Chazal and to be inspired by them to become better people, to follow the halacha and to get close to Hashem.